So Rob, thank you very much for that introduction, but I will note that it was Phil you were taking long walks in the moonlight with last night and not me. So I know where I sit in the priority ranking. Yeah. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for your time this morning. Rob went over my background, but here it is with the dates and the numbers. I've been really lucky. I've had a great career. I came out of college and into the Air Force right as information security really started to ramp up. The Air Force is probably 10, maybe 15 years ahead of general commercial industry, since they've been getting targeted by the targeted attackers for a number of years. So we cut our teeth there, all of us. There's a number of us ex-Air Force guys from that era who cut our teeth in information security in that business. Then I got to go to DC and do all that spooky offensive computer stuff, which was a whole lot of fun and really helped me appreciate the realities of the kinds of capabilities that attackers have, as well as how flawed your assumptions may be and what you think is secure. And then, of course, life came in. I got married, moved away from DC, was in the midst of trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, professionally at least. And Mike and Ben called and said, hey, we got this little thing going, this carbon black. Maybe you want to come help us with it. And of course, it's been a wild ride since. It's been fantastic. Like I said, I'm really lucky since this has been my career. And people would call me a subject matter expert. And that's been very useful and beneficial today because holy cow. This is a crazy time to be in information security. It is so noisy out there with us trying to figure out how we're going to evolve from this position of static protections where we deploy McAfee and forget about it to this operational program. The continuous procedures of protection, detection, and response is an operational thing throughout the enterprise. And since those workflows are new and evolving, there's a lot of spending now. So there's a lot of markets and vendors out. And we all are doing business slightly differently. As a community, we're all coming together to try to understand and establish which procedures work, which are best, have the best practices rise to the top, and then start building tools before that. Except vendors are out in front of us, so they're at the table as well. I'm a vendor too. So they also trying to provide products that assume a certain workflow, and everybody's got a different opinion. But those vendors, right, our marketing organizations, they got big bullhorns. They're loud, and it can make it very, very confusing and chaotic and hard to tease apart. It's challenging for me, and I'm a subject matter expert in the field. And I can't imagine how difficult it is for those of you who are newer to this business. It's enough, right, for all the confusion to make it, even a little depressing. Trust me, and I've had my cycles over the years. For me, my my defining moment and my origin story for carbon black goes back to the Air Force days. When those you military guys, the senior civilian in charge of the Air Force SITS program, which buys all the IT stuff for all the Air Force nationwide, worldwide. I gave him a big scary brief on the insecurity of his networks, and he thumped me in the chest and said, I believe you, son. I've got $50 million to spend next year in Air Force IT infrastructure, and security is priority number one. You tell me what to buy and we'll buy it. And we took that seriously. And we went back and researched all the things that were available from various vendors, but this was 2002. Right? We barely have those products available for us today, much less 15 years ago. Since then, right, I have been waiting for industry to catch up, and for the commercial market to catch up, and for solutions to be available. And it's been very frustrating. And with all the confusion in the market today, that's like a glimmer of hope, but it's still a lot of frustration. But I realized as I kind of reflected upon myself and my career and our industry in preparation for this talk, that somewhere in the last year or so, I have become optimistic. And there's, of course, a lot of things that go into that. But as I tried to kind of tease out and figure out the thing that was making me optimistic, I settled on this. This was a paper written in 1995 back when the internet was still a baby, by a pair of economists from the University of Tennessee. It's a human capital perspective on criminal careers. They were studying why criminals are encouraged to do crime. Why do they choose to break the law instead of being a law-abiding citizen? And it's a simple cost-benefit equation. They included this equation in their paper in order to help model and kind of codify the elements that they saw as the most salient. Over on the left, it's the benefits. You got the direct monetary benefits of committing the crime in 1995. That would be, the cash, drugs, VCRs, or rear projection TVs. You might be able to get from committing some kind of crime. You got the psychological benefits, say the street cred that you would get from your buds for, breaking into somewhere. Over on the right side, you've got the costs of committing the crime. It's first the opportunity cost, how much it's going to take you in your time or whatever resources you have to outlay in order to commit that crime, plus the prosecution cost, what your lost wage is going to be if you're incarcerated for X number of years, times the probability of apprehension and conviction. As note, they're independent and separate elements because those two are independent and separate things, both with their own probabilities. If you apply this to the digital world today in cybercrime, it's pretty fantastic. Right? The monetary benefit has shifted from VCRs and rear projection TVs to credit cards, the personally identifiable information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The psychological benefit, back in the kind of the late 90s when this was first developed, it was maybe the street cred was defacing websites. When was the last time you saw a website defaced, huh? These days, it's more like stolen Twitter feeds, or maybe leaking the celebrity nude photos. But you could also expand that to include, say, the hacktivists, and the folks that have politically charged leanings. All the stuff coming out on WikiLeaks, for example, the anonymous. For example, maybe even influencing the election process of another country. Over on the right-hand side with the costs, this is where it really gets incredible. Because the opportunity cost is roughly the same, the number of resources or time you have to outlay in order to commit the crime. But take a look at the cost of prosecution and the probability of apprehension and comprehension of conviction. You all know as well as I that those probabilities on the internet today are basically zero. And that takes that whole element down to zero. So when you weigh the cost-benefit analysis, the only reason someone hasn't compromised a given network is because it hasn't been worth their time. Now, as sobering as that data point is, this still makes me optimistic. It makes me optimistic because it makes very clear that we don't have to eliminate the probability of someone compromising our networks. We don't have to make it impossible to do. All we have to do is make this cost-benefit equation balance out. For you on your network, with the resource, with the data you have that an attacker can convert into some kind of benefit, whether it be direct monetary benefit or psychological benefit, all you have to do is increase his cost of executing that crime to a point where it no longer makes sense. We don't have to fix information security. We don't have to make it go away. We just have to manage that problem. Now, this distinction between fixing and managing, this is one I remind myself of all the time. See, I'm an engineer, right? That's my training. I'm a technical guy. My job is to fix problems. I make them go away. But some things in life, that you can't fix them. You can't make them go away. All you can do is manage them carefully over time. About, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 times a year, I'll go pull up this and read it. This was published to the web in 1994 by John something, or I forget his last name. He's the founder of Autodesk, most well known for AutoCAD. He was probably 5 years into the startup life of AutoCAD or Autodesk and started having weight problems. I can certainly appreciate 5 years into a startup life and starting to struggle. So him, being an engineer and a technical guy, he took the empirical analytical engineering approach to understanding weight loss, and he studied it as a topic. And one of the insights from there is that your weight is not something you can fix. It can only be managed. Now, many of you might say, well, duh, of course, right? That's obvious. But it's human nature to think otherwise. It's obvious every time you go to the checkout line at the grocery store, Men's Health, Cosmopolitan, they've all got the headlines with the one secret you need that, let's see, this time of year, it's the secret to getting that beach body. It always promising the secret magic silver bullet you need in order to lose weight fast. And that's never going to happen. You know that intellectually, but there's always the hope that you can find that magic silver bullet. In this paper, he uses the example of the Bell telephone system in order to illustrate this point. The Bell system back in, he starts with 1902, had a ratio of engineers, of operators to phones. There was, let's see, one operator for every 47 phones. Now, at the time, there were, I don't know, 1 million phones or something out in the world. So that required a relatively large organization of 30,000 telephone operators in order to operate that. Now, remember, this is 1902, right? So there's a telephone switchboard right here that's like the direct lines coming in from all your phones. And then there is an operator that is doing the manual cross-connect from your line to whoever your caller line is in order to connect that together at the switchboard. And that was sustainable there for 1902 with that with that scale and class of a problem. 30,000 people is a large organization, but it's a manageable size. Many of you probably come from companies that are larger. But the Bell executives had a vision. Right? They knew that the telephone was this revolutionary device that was going to catch on. It was going to be in every home, in every business, on every desk. And they foresaw a world with millions and millions and millions of telephones. And with a ratio of operators to phones of 1 to 47, it was going to take an organization of 3 million operators in order to sustain that. Clearly impractical. So they went to the engineers and said, hey guys, right, can you automate this phone switch so we take the human out? And the engineers said, yeah, we sure can. We can totally automate that 100%. But it's going to take decades and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Clearly impractical to do very quickly. But of course, right, that team got together, the managers and the engineers. Managers who build organizations with people and processes to repeatedly solve problems in a scalable, tractable, and repeatable manner. Engineers who apply technology and incremental fixes to improve efficiency. And the engineers came up with a series of small, practical, reasonable engineering improvements to make that operator's life more efficient. They implemented those over a period of time, and by the 80s, they'd gotten that ratio down 20-fold, which seems relatively small. But it was enough that with however many 100 million phones that were in existence by the 1980s, that only required an organization of 160,000 operators in order to maintain. Still a tractable problem for the engineers, for the managers to manage in an organization. And then today, here we are another 30, almost 40 years later. I mean, when was the last time you talked to an operator to complete a call? Right? And finally, 100 years later, 80 years later, they have fully automated that system. But in order to solve that problem, it took a combination of management, people, and processes, and technology from the engineers. And that the solution for fixing the problem straight up front was not required. Fixing, managing, and solving. 3 very distinctly and different things. Now, if I'd asked you all, 5 minutes ago, the difference between those 3 things, many of you probably would have said, yeah, they're the same, right? And hopefully now you'll appreciate the nuance and the difference. As you scale this up and talk to the business guys who don't understand all this kind of computer security stuff, you consider managing problems like this, and it's pretty normal. They deal with this kind of stuff all the time. I was having a conversation with a CISO of a major financial multinational conglomerate firm, huge firm, interested in a whole lot of different fields. And he remarked that his board that he reports to quarterly or whatever, they have a corporate risk register where they keep track of all the risks to the corporation. It's required by SEC guidelines to report at least a subset of those in your annual filings. And that they rack and stack those risks to the corporation by overall magnitude of that risk. And for him and his organization, information security was number one. Holy cow, that's insane. This is a firm that is subject to all these major geopolitical risks and issues. Currency fluctuation, the price of oil, Brexit, the stability in the Middle East, all sorts of these major political issues that they have zero control over as a corporation, zero influence, zero ability to manage. And yet information security of their devices on their networks that they 100% control is still the number one top risk. As a security guy, that pisses me off. It makes me disappointed and honestly a little ashamed and embarrassed. Every one of these corporations, his corporation as well as all of ours, manage risks on a day-to-day basis. And many of those are risks we don't control. Retail has got shrinkage. The financial firm has got fraud. And every corporation in America is subject to general liability. A pregnant woman could walk into the lobby of any one of our buildings, slip on a wet floor, crack her head, kill herself and the baby. A tragic event. Unpredictable, unpreventable. In any one of those situations, the corporation could be held liable or found negligent in some way because maybe the janitor didn't get out there to put the wet floor sign out, or maybe the carpet was frayed, or you've seen these things unfold. And right, as a corporation, they have zero control over it. But for all of those risks across all of the industries that our corporations are subject to, they've managed to find the right balance of operational risk mitigations, risk transference through insurance, and just straight up risk acceptance of the remaining residual risk to a point where it's business as usual. It's not a major crisis for the board managing the liability programs for their corporation and their physical facilities. It's not a major thing for the board to manage shrinkage or fraud or. There's certainly things that have to be managed inside the organization, and there's metrics, and there's reporting, and there's investments in operational procedures in order to reduce the risk, but it's business as usual. Information security is not yet business as usual for the board. Why not? Now, if you want a startup tip from apparently I can take the label successful entrepreneur now. Yes. Ask yourself that question. Don't start with a piece of tech and try to find somewhere it fits in the technology stack. Start with that question from the board and start working your way down. If you find an answer that helps mature our ability to manage that risk, at that kind of level, you're going to have a highly valuable product that is durable in the market for years to come. It is a very, very large question. We're not going to answer it today. But I find it useful frame up to talk about and to think about as we try to study and structure kind of our security industry as a whole. And one of the things that I think is a big gap is confidence. Right? Imagine yourself as the CISO sitting in front of the board, and say maybe you got an aggressive guy over in the corner who's pretty, in your face, and he starts confronting the CISO and digging in. How confident is that guy going to be in the efficacy of the technical controls he's deployed across the organization in order to stop attackers? The truth is, in most organizations, it's total chaos. We're trying to manage and herd a whole bunch of cats. We've got a whole slew of controls across a variety of layers of the stack, but we all know they're all imperfect. And it's everything we can do to keep up with the controls and make sure everything's squared away. And very few of our IT organizations, they have the discipline and change control, configuration management, the basics, in order to keep everything nice and squared away. And we have to manage within that. The CISO knows that. And he knows that there's a gap there. Why is that? Right? It's because, I believe, in large part to the fact that most of our organizations, in the balance of people, products, and processes that it takes to manage security are more like that over on the right. Historically, security has come out of the IT group. In the IT world, you buy products, and the business sees the value from the product, and people are attacks on top of that. I can't tell you how many times I, as a vendor, have been asked, how many people does it take to administer your software? And I just shake my head, because if you're asking that question, you don't get it, and you don't understand. But in the IT world, when you're talking about an exchange server or a file server or something where the value to the business comes from the software and the solution, that makes perfect sense, because the people are attacks on top of it. In the security world, especially here in threat hunting, products like mine, products support you. The value to the business comes from you. It comes from the people. And tools are just a tool in your tool bag to enable you to do your job. You can hack it together with your own in-house scripts and capabilities. You've seen plenty of examples of that, like here today. Carbon Black, right? That's our vision to help you scale that up in an enterprise across the board. Choose your poison, right? Doesn't matter which, right? This idea that we can buy some magic product and sprinkle a little magic fairy dust on the top of it, and it's going to magically protect against all attackers, this is a cancer inside our industry. The longer that we continue to cling to this false hope that we can deploy some magic product across our organization and it will magically stop all attacks, and we can forget about building the people and the processes, it will continually hold us back from accepting that and building the solutions of products, people, and processes to actually make progress in security. So, a lot of you out there are probably going, duh, right? I've heard that 3 times yesterday. And you're right. You did. I was a little satisfied, pleased, and maybe a little humbled as I sat in and heard this same message being given to you multiple times over the course of yesterday. Different words, different flavors, different spins, but the same basic message. My ask to you is, why did all of us think it important enough to stand up here today and share it? It's because inside this room, we think, yeah, that's pretty much obvious. I get it. But as soon as you step outside this room into the broader organization, into the broader industry, holy cow, we are unique. My call to you today is to stand up. Stand up and be heard. Stand up and preach this message. Stand up and lead inside your organizations. You may think, I'm not a leader. Right? That's bullshit. Everyone is a leader. Leadership happens at every level. We typically, inside our organizations, we're schooled in our society to look for people in positions of authority as leaders, the CEO, your boss, some guy standing up on stage at an event like this, and say, he's my leader. I'm going to listen to him. But leadership happens at every level. It happens up the chain. It happens down the chain. It happens from peer to peer. You can lead. History is laden with examples of unexpected leaders in unexpected places. Rosa Parks refused to get up off the seat on her bus, and she became a leader, globally recognized leader in the civil rights movement. A Chinese man stood in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square and became a symbol for resistance against government oppression. You can lead inside your organizations, and you can do it, and it's got to start to happen with you. If you believe, stand up for it, and folks will follow. But there's another piece. Right? Leadership requires credibility. In order to be credible, you've got to be competent. In order to be a leader, you've got to know what you believe in. You've got to stand up for your beliefs. You've got to preach it. You've got to speak it. People must believe in you in order to follow you and to follow your message. In order for people to believe in you, you've got to have credibility. In order for you to have credibility, you've got to have competence. There is no more competence when it comes to the threat than the people sitting right in this room. With the subject of threat, on the topic of threat hunting and the structure of security across our organizations, it is very likely you know more than your boss. It is probably you know more than your boss's boss, and you almost certainly know more about the threat than your CISO. That means that on this particular topic of leading change and information security, you can lead more strongly and more effectively than your CISO. Don't be looking to those guys for your leadership on this topic. It's going to require you. Now you may think, hey, right, that sounds kind of cool, JJ, I believe you, but this is backed up by research, right? These two guys are professors at the University of Santa Clara in California. They have been studying the topic of leadership for 40 years. And you know what? Leadership doesn't really change. Leadership today and the characteristics and traits that make good leaders are the same in ancient Greece as they were in the Middle Ages as they are today. The 2 top rules in their 10 fundamental truths of leadership: 1, you. You can make a difference. Leaders happen everywhere. It is not a top-down thing, despite the fact that we are brainwashed from day one, including in our school systems, from kindergarten, to sit quietly in a room and raise your hand and respect authority. You can be a leader. And number 2, credibility is the foundation of leadership. It's not just my opinion, folks. And it's going to take us to change it. So I encourage you to stand up inside your organizations and make your voice heard. Change the conversation. Make folks let go of that false hope that we think we can deploy some magic product that's going to forgo the need for people and processes in order to solve security. We will never fix the security problem, at least not for a number of years to go. In the meantime, all we can do is our part from an engineering standpoint to apply incremental improvements to continue to chip it away and then balance that out with people and processes to balance out the cost-benefit equation. But it doesn't stop there. Because you can make a difference inside your organizations. But when you draw ourselves in the broader scope of industry, we are still just a speck. And there are a whole lot of organizations not represented in this room. And while we can stand up and individually have a voice inside our organization, if we're going to make a difference in the information security industry, you've got to be heard outside your org. So I encourage you not just to stand up inside your organizations, but to do so in the industry. This is a transformative time of information security. It 100% is. I have been waiting on this moment for 15 years, and it is here. I'm doing my part, but I can't do it alone. You can make a difference inside your organizations. But if you step up and you be heard across the industry, together, we can do it. We can change the message industry-wide, and we can change the conversation, and we can change our world. Rob talked about some of our spooky days back in D.C. It was probably 2007, give or take. And I was in the basement of a building that doesn't exist outside the Beltway, middle of the night, by myself, providing what was supposed to be routine technical support to a ground operation overseas. Things went bad. Technical. Y'all are all aware with technical problems, right? Technical problems happen everywhere. Technical problem. Stuff started not working. And given the situation, because the technical stuff didn't work, there were suddenly lives at risk. I had about 30 minutes of a window in order to fix it. It was just 3 o'clock in the morning. The number of people that had the clearance, context, and capability to assist me, that list was already very small. And the number of people on that list that I could wake up and get to this basement of a building that doesn't exist outside the Beltway within 30 minutes was 0. I was really looking for that smart guy in the basement to call. And then I realized, I'm it. All the resources of the United States government were all sitting on my shoulders. And despite the fact that none of you were aware, everybody was depending on me. Things went fine. But for me, that was a crucible moment. And I still remember that clearly. And I reflect upon that frequently to remind myself that I don't have to rely on anyone else. There is no smart guy in the basement who is going to come tell us how to do information security. There is no smart guy inside your organization besides you who is going to stand up and lead and tell your organization how to do business. And in the broader scope of the industry, we are the smart guys in the basement. We're it, folks. We are it. And the longer we continue to cling to the false hope that we can fix security and products are going to solve all the security problems, the longer we will continue to be insecure. Stand up. This is our crucible as an information security industry. It may not have the acute tactical nature of my 30 minutes in the middle of the night, but it is most definitely a crucible for all of us. And together, we can change the conversation and we can change our world.